Settle in, my friends, into the soft embrace of this moment as the hum of your day begins to recede, much like the distant echo of a forgotten song. Close your eyes if they feel heavy, or simply let your gaze drift, unfocused, across the muted colors of your room. Imagine, for a moment, the quiet hush that falls just before dawn, when the world holds its breath, contemplating the coming light. That's the space we're entering tonight, a space of gentle whispers and the slow unraveling of time. You're here not to be entertained by loud declarations, but to drift on currents of forgotten history, to let the past unfurl like a silken tapestry, stitch by patient stitch. And in this journey, surrounded by the echoes of antiquity, you probably won't make it through this day, let alone the rest of the script. But that's perfectly all right. Before we truly begin to drift, if you find solace in these quiet historical journeys, a gentle tap on that like button is always appreciated. It helps these sleepy tailies find their way to other weary travelers seeking a soft landing. And if you're new to our little corner of calm, consider subscribing so you don't miss out on future voyages into the past. As the world outside continues its restless turning, take a moment to drop a comment below, letting us know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? To imagine all of us scattered across the globe, united by this shared whisper of history. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. A journey not of conquest or grand battles, but of something far more subtle, far more profound. The forgotten art of weaving silence in ancient Persia. You find yourself standing on a dusty, sun-baked path, the kind that seems to absorb all sound, leaving only the gentle thrum of your own heartbeat. The air is warm, thick with the scent of sun-warmed earth, and, if you lean in just so, a faint whisper of rosewater from a nearby courtyard. This isn't the bustling marketplace you might imagine, nor the echoing halls of a king's palace. No, you're in a quieter corner, a village perhaps, nestled amongst the foothills, where the rhythm of life is set by the sun and the turning of the seasons, rather than the clamor of ambition. You notice the dust, fine and ochre-colored, clinging to the hem of your simple, loosely woven tunic. It's a constant companion here, a silent witness to every step. Your sandals, worn soft from countless journeys, barely disturb it. Look around you. The houses are low and unassuming, built from sun-dried mud bricks, their flat roofs holding secrets of starlight and morning dew. There are no garish colors, no ostentatious displays of wealth. Everything speaks of a quiet dignity, a humble resilience. A lone date palm, ancient and gnarled, offers a slender patch of shade, its fronds rustling like whispered secrets in the imperceptible breeze. The heat shimmers above the distant horizon, making the world waver as if seen through old glass. It's the kind of heat that encourages introspection, that slows the very passage of thought. You find yourself listening, not for sounds, but for their absence. And that, my dear listener, is precisely where our story begins. Ancient Persia, a land often conjured in our minds as a realm of magnificent empires, of golden cities and legendary armies, held within its vast tapestry a thread less celebrated, the intentional cultivation of quiet. Not just the absence of noise, mind you, but a deliberate practice, a philosophical approach to the world that recognized silence as a tangible entity, something to be woven, to be nurtured, to be understood. This isn't the kind of silence you find in a library, where hushed tones are enforced by stern librarians, or the awkward quiet of a first date gone terribly wrong. No, this was a more profound silence, an active stillness. Historians still debate whether this profound emphasis on quiet truly originated in the Zoroastrian reverence for creation, or evolved from the practicalities of a world without constant clamor. But whatever its genesis, it permeated daily life. Imagine for a moment a craftsman, not a potter or a weaver of vibrant rugs, but a silent smith. His tools aren't hammers or looms, but the very rhythms of his day, the measured pace of his breath, the careful placement of his steps. He understands that sound, unchecked, is a form of chaos, and true order, true harmony, lies in its mindful composition. It's a bit like learning to play an instrument, but instead of notes, you're playing the spaces between them. Or perhaps, more accurately, learning to compose a symphony where the most powerful moments are those when the orchestra falls utterly silent, leaving the audience suspended, breathless. This concept, so alien to our modern, noise-saturated lives, was a cornerstone of a certain way of being. They weren't just avoiding noise. They were creating quiet. It's an easy mistake to think of quiet as a void. But in this ancient landscape, it was a presence, rich and full. Consider the architecture. The houses, as you observe, are built with thick mud brick walls, designed not just for insulation against the heat, but also to absorb sound. Courtyards, often featuring small gurgling fountains, were not just aesthetic additions, but served as acoustic buffers, their gentle murmurs masking harsher exterior noises and inviting contemplation. Even the textiles, the rich carpets and hangings, were not merely decorative. Their thick wool and intricate weaves were exceptional sound dampeners, creating pockets of serene quiet within bustling homes. It's almost as if their interior decorators were also their sound engineers, a concept that would probably give modern-day interior designers a mild panic attack, trying to match the acoustic panels with the throw pillows. And yet, it worked. The very fabric of their lives, from the bricks in their walls to the rugs beneath their feet, conspired to create an environment conducive to this deeper understanding of silence. You can almost feel the gentle cushioning of the air around you, a palpable softness that discourages any sudden movement, any harsh word. There was a curious practice, an obscure cultural tidbit that speaks volumes about this philosophy. In certain upper-class homes, particularly those of scholars and poets, there were designated listening rooms. These weren't for listening to music, as you might assume. No, these rooms were meticulously designed to exclude all external sound, creating an almost anechoic environment. People would sit in them, sometimes for hours, simply to listen to the silence itself, to the subtle hum of their own blood, the faint rustle of their clothes, the very sound of their own thoughts. It was a form of meditation, a way to sharpen the inner ear, to cultivate an awareness that went beyond the clamor of the world. Imagine trying to explain that to someone today. Oh yes, I spent my evening in a room designed to hear absolutely nothing. You might get a few confused stares, or perhaps an offer to check your hearing. But for them, it was an art, a discipline, a path to inner peace. It was a deliberate withdrawal from the ceaseless chatter, an act of radical quietude. And as you stand here, feeling the profound stillness of the ancient air, you begin to understand, on some deeper level, the allure of such a practice. The sun continues its slow, deliberate climb, painting the sky with softer, more muted hues as the morning progresses. The heat, though present, is not oppressive. It's a gentle warmth that permeates everything, inviting a languid pace. You notice a lizard emerald green, basking on a sun-drenched stone, its stillness a perfect mirror of the surrounding quiet. Even the insects seem to hum in a lower register, a subtle drone that blends seamlessly into the background, rather than jarring against it. This isn't the silence of emptiness, but a silence that is alive, brimming with subtle energies. It's the kind of quiet that makes you acutely aware of your own breathing, the soft brush of your clothes against your skin, the distant, almost imperceptible sound of your own heart beating. This understanding of silence wasn't just confined to personal contemplation or the quiet corners of homes. It permeated the very fabric of social interaction. Think about the way conversations unfolded. In a world without the constant barrage of digital notifications, without the insistent clamor of machines, words carried more weight. There was less need to fill every pause, less urgency to express every fleeting thought. silence wasn't awkward. It was an integral part of communication, a space for reflection, for the assimilation of ideas. Imagine a meeting, perhaps between two merchants discussing a trade deal. Instead of rapid-fire negotiations, punctuated by aggressive assertions, there would be long pauses, moments where words hung in the air, their implications settling like fine dust. A skilled negotiator wouldn't rush to fill these silences. They would use them, allowing their counterpart to consider, to reveal, perhaps inadvertently, their own thoughts. It was a game of quiet chess, where the true moves were made in the pauses, not just the pronouncements. This deliberate use of silence in communication extended even to the most formal settings. In the court of the Achaemenid kings, for instance, a particularly important decision might be preceded by an extended period of profound quiet. Not a tense silence, mind you, but one of shared contemplation, where advisors and courtiers would collectively hold their breath, allowing the gravity of the moment to settle. It was believed that in such stillness, wisdom could emerge, unclouded by the ego or the clamor of competing voices. It's a stark contrast to our modern boardrooms, where the loudest voice often wins, and silence is seen as a sign of weakness or, worse, disinterest. Trying to implement that kind of meeting dynamic today, you'd probably have a few people checking their phones under the table, wondering if the Wi-Fi had cut out. But in ancient Persia, it was a sign of respect, a demonstration of intellectual humility. Even in their storytelling, a revered art form, the pauses were as important as the words themselves. A skilled storyteller wouldn't just recite a narrative. They would weave it, using pregnant silences to build suspense, to emphasize a poignant moment, or to allow the listener's imagination to fill in the unspoken details. It was a dance between sound and stillness, a rhythmic ebb and flow that drew the audience deeper into the tale. You can almost hear the low, resonant voice of a bard, his words painting vivid pictures. Then a sudden, elongated pause, leaving you suspended on the precipice of the next event, your mind racing to anticipate what comes next. It's a far cry from the rapid-fire editing and constant stimulation of modern media, where every second must be packed with information, lest the viewer's attention wander. Perhaps they understood the true engagement often comes from the space between the stimuli, not just the stimuli themselves. One fascinating historical fact that highlights this cultural inclination towards quiet was the design of certain ancient Persian gardens, known as paradisa. While we often think of gardens as vibrant, fragrant spaces, many of these gardens, especially those associated with temples or philosophical schools, were deliberately designed for auditory tranquility. They were laid out with specific pathways, strategically placed walls, and plantings chosen not just for their beauty, but for their ability to muffle sound. Water features, like small, trickling streams or quiet, reflecting pools, were used to create a gentle, natural white noise that further masked distant sounds, rather than creating a grand, splashing spectacle. It was a conscious effort to create a sanctuary of sound, a place where the human spirit could truly rest, unburdened by the cacophony of the world. It's a level of intentionality that feels almost impossibly serene in our current era of leaf blowers and constant traffic noise. You feel a subtle shift in the air, a very slight cooling as the sun edges higher. The dust on the path, which seemed so omnipresent, now appears almost luminous in the intensified light. A lone bird, high above, lets out a single plaintive call, then falls silent again, as if respecting the profound stillness that permeates the very atmosphere. This bird, too, is a master of the pause. This deliberate cultivation of a quiet soundscape wasn't merely an aesthetic preference. It was seen as crucial for mental and spiritual well-being. They understood, intuitively perhaps, what modern science is only now confirming: that constant noise pollution can lead to stress, fatigue, and a diminished capacity for deep thought. For the ancient Persians, silence was not a luxury. It was a necessity, a vital nutrient for the soul. They believed that without these periods of profound quiet, the inner wellspring of creativity and wisdom would dry up. It was their version of a digital detox, only without the screens to begin with. It was simply a detox from the ceaseless hum of existence. And as you stand here, bathed in this ancient quiet, you can almost feel your own thoughts beginning to slow, to unfurl, like petals in a gentle breeze. The world outside, with its insistent demands, feels wonderfully distant. As the morning sun climbs higher, casting long, languid shadows across the dusty path, you begin to notice the finer details of the silent landscape around you. The air, once merely warm, now holds a gentle, almost palpable humidity, hinting at the distant presence of a water source, perhaps a qanat, an ancient underground aqueduct, or a hidden spring. Even the sounds that do exist, like the distant bleating of a goat or the faint creak of a wooden cart, seem to be swallowed almost immediately by the vast quiet, leaving barely an echo. It's as if the very atmosphere itself is a giant sponge, absorbing all stray noises, ensuring nothing disturbs the profound stillness. You pass a small, unassuming shrine, a collection of smooth, river-worn stones piled artfully, adorned with a few strands of faded, brightly colored cloth fluttering almost imperceptibly in the gentle breeze. It's not grand or imposing, but it emanates a quiet reverence, a sense of patient waiting. People here didn't feel the need to shout their prayers. They murmured them, or perhaps simply thought them, trusting that the silence itself carried their intentions skyward. It speaks to a deep, inherent trust in the unseen, a quiet confidence that the universe listens even to the softest whisper. It makes you wonder if our modern-day desire for constant affirmation and immediate feedback stems from a fundamental distrust in the quiet efficacy of things. This reverence for quiet wasn't just about personal inner peace. It had a tangible impact on the very fabric of their society, particularly in the realm of education and learning. Imagine a classroom not filled with the bustling chatter of students, but with a profound, focused hush. Lessons weren't delivered through booming lectures or endless debates, but through careful exposition, punctuated by meaningful silences. Students were encouraged not just to absorb information, but to internalize it, to let it marinate in the quiet recesses of their minds. A major historical fact here is that ancient Persian academies, especially those focused on philosophy, astronomy, and medicine, often incorporated extensive periods of quiet contemplation into their curricula. It was believed that true understanding, true wisdom, could only blossom in the fertile ground of stillness, far from the distracting clamor of superficial knowledge. It was like a very early version of a silent retreat, but for teenagers, which sounds like something out of a very specific kind of dystopian novel, or perhaps just a nightmare for most modern adolescents. The role of the teacher in such an environment was less about transmitting raw facts and more about guiding the student towards their own internal discoveries. They understood that pouring information into a noisy, cluttered mind was like trying to fill a sieve. Only when the mind was quiet, receptive, could true learning take root. This meant that discussions, when they occurred, were deeply considered, each word weighed, each pause respected. There was no pressure to speak just for the sake of speaking, no need to fill every void with a performative utterance. It was a learning environment built on depth, not speed. A slow-cooked meal for the mind, rather than a fast-food intellectual drive-through. There's an obscure cultural tidbit that offers a glimpse into this unique educational approach. In some more advanced schools, students were occasionally tasked with listening to the ink. They would be given a freshly written scroll, and their assignment was not to read the words, but to sit in silence with the scroll, attempting to discern the silence within the text itself, the unwritten implications, the underlying intentions, the quiet spaces between the words that gave them their true meaning. It sounds like a beautifully poetic way to learn critical thinking, or perhaps just a very clever way for teachers to get a few minutes of peace and quiet. Historians still debate whether this practice was widespread or limited to elite scholarly circles, but its very existence speaks volumes about their philosophy. It was about developing an acute sensitivity, not just to what was said, but to what was not said. You feel a sense of calm beginning to settle deeply within you, a quiet hum that resonates with the stillness of the ancient world. The desire to rush, to fill the space, slowly dissipates, replaced by a gentle acceptance of the moment. The air feels cleaner, the light softer, and even the thoughts in your own mind seem to drift by with a newfound grace. It's as if the ancient Persians, with their subtle mastery of silence, have reached across the centuries and offered you a small, precious gift, the opportunity to simply be, without the insistent pressure to do. And in that simple being, a different kind of understanding begins to unfurl, like a delicate blossom opening to the morning sun. The sun, now higher in the sky, paints the landscape in bolder strokes, yet the inherent quiet remains, an unyielding presence. You feel the subtle shift in the air, a slight warming on your skin as the day progresses, but it's a gentle warmth, not an oppressive heat. The shadows have shortened, pulling closer to the mud brick walls, offering less refuge from the sun's gaze, yet the tranquility persists, a testament to the land's enduring patience. A small, almost imperceptible tremor runs through the ground, perhaps a distant herd, or simply the earth breathing, but even this subtle vibration seems to be absorbed by the profound stillness, leaving no lasting disturbance. As you walk, you notice the rhythm of daily life unfolding around you, but at a tempo so measured, so deliberate, that it almost feels like a slow-motion film. A woman emerges from a doorway, carrying a large clay pot on her hip, her steps unhurried, her gaze directed inward. She moves with a quiet grace, her presence a silent counterpoint to the rustling of her simple garments. There's no frantic energy, no hurried tasks to complete. Everything is imbued with a sense of purpose, yes, but also with an acceptance of the time it takes. It's a stark contrast to the modern world's obsession with efficiency and speed, where even walking feels like a race against an invisible clock. Here, the clock is the sun, and its hands move with an ancient, unyielding slowness. This pervasive presence of silence wasn't just about individual well-being. It was deeply interwoven with their spiritual and religious practices. For the ancient Persians, particularly those influenced by Zoroastrianism, the world was alive with subtle energies, and to perceive these, one needed a quiet mind and a still heart. Loudness, chaos, and excessive chatter were seen as distractions, obscuring the divine whispers that permeated creation. It was believed that the very act of listening to the silence was a form of prayer, a way to connect with the benevolent forces of the universe. This isn't the kind of quiet you find in a library, where hushed tones are enforced by stern librarians, but a deeper, more intentional stillness. Consider the role of the fire temples, the central places of worship in Zoroastrianism. While ceremonies involved chanting and ritual, there were often long periods of profound silence, moments for individual contemplation before the sacred flame. The priests, known as magi, were not just custodians of rituals. They were also masters of quietude, guiding congregants into these deeper states of spiritual listening. A major historical fact is that the structure of many Zoroastrian fire temples was specifically designed to enhance acoustic absorption, fostering an environment of deep reverence and stillness. Imagine a modern concert hall, but instead of amplifying sound, it was meticulously engineered to absorb it, leaving only the subtlest echoes of devotion. It seems almost counterintuitive to our modern sensibilities, where religious services often involve rousing music and powerful sermons. But for them, the path to the divine was often paved with profound quiet. An obscure cultural tidbit related to this spiritual quietude involved certain ascetic practices. Some devout individuals would engage in vows of silence, not for a few hours or a day, but for extended periods, sometimes months or even years. This wasn't necessarily a punitive measure, but a deliberate spiritual discipline, a way to purify the mind, to sharpen their inner perception, and to hear the voice of Ahura Mazda, their supreme deity, more clearly. It's a bit like taking a digital detox, but instead of turning off your phone, you simply stop talking for a really, really long time. You can imagine the social awkwardness that would ensue if you tried that at your next family gathering. Historians still debate the widespread nature of such extreme vows, but their existence highlights the profound value placed on internal stillness as a pathway to spiritual truth. You feel a gentle breeze now, a soft sigh that rustles the sparse leaves of a distant olive tree. It carries with it the faint, sweet scent of blossoming oleander, a delicate perfume that enhances the sense of peaceful introspection. The sun continues its majestic arc, and you realize that in this ancient world, time doesn't rush. It simply unfolds like a vast, unhurried scroll. The people here weren't waiting for the next big thing. They were immersed in the exquisite details of the present moment, listening to the subtle rhythms, the unspoken truths, the profound whispers woven into the very silence of their lives. It's a different way of experiencing existence, one that asks you to slow down, to breathe deeply, and to simply listen to the quiet symphony of being. The midday sun, now a benevolent orb high above, casts a brilliant, almost ethereal light over the ancient landscape. The air, though warm, retains a profound stillness, a gentle weight that encourages slow, deliberate movements. You notice how the shadows, once sharp and distinct, have softened, blurring the edges of buildings and trees, lending the entire scene a dreamlike quality. Even the occasional distant call of a bird, or the faint rustle of dry leaves, sounds muted, as if passing through a thick velvet curtain before reaching your ears. It's a quiet that doesn't demand attention, but simply is, inviting you to sink deeper into its embrace. You observe a potter, working patiently outside his modest dwelling. His hands, caked with clay, move with an unhurried grace, shaping the wet earth on a slow-turning wheel. There's no frantic energy, no rush to complete his piece. Each movement is a testament to mindful creation, a silent dialogue between the craftsman and his material. The rhythmic hum of the wheel is soft, almost imperceptible, blending into the ambient quiet. He doesn't speak as he works, his concentration absolute, his presence a powerful anchor in the silent landscape. It makes you realize how much of our modern productivity is driven by noise. The clatter of keyboards, the ping of notifications, the constant stream of communication. Here, creation flows from a deeper, quieter wellspring. This deep appreciation for silence extended beyond personal reflection and religious practice. It profoundly influenced the artistic expression and aesthetics of ancient Persia. Unlike many cultures that celebrated grand, boisterous public displays, a significant portion of Persian art, particularly in its earlier periods, valued subtlety, introspection, and implied meaning. Think of the intricate patterns on a Persian rug. They don't shout for attention, but invite close scrutiny, revealing layers of meaning and beauty in their quiet complexity. A major historical fact is that early Persian miniature painting, a highly sophisticated art form, often used vast, empty spaces and muted color palettes to create a sense of profound quietude and contemplation, allowing the viewer's eye to rest and ponder the scene rather than being overwhelmed by visual clutter. It's the visual equivalent of a gentle whisper, rather than a shouted declaration. This artistic philosophy of weaving silence into visual forms is quite fascinating. They understood that sometimes what is not depicted is as important as what is. The negative space, the areas of calm and emptiness, were just as vital to the composition as the detailed figures or motifs. It's like a good joke that doesn't over-explain the punchline, or a piece of music where the pauses amplify the notes. This approach to visual composition encouraged a slower, more deliberate way of seeing, inviting the viewer to engage in a quiet dialogue with the artwork rather than simply consuming it. You wouldn't just glance at a painting. You would enter it, letting its quiet spaces guide your eye and your thoughts. There's an obscure cultural tidbit that highlights this artistic subtlety. In some instances, particularly in the design of ceremonial garments or specific architectural details, patterns would be intentionally left incomplete, or certain colors would be so muted as to be almost indistinguishable from their background. This wasn't due to error or lack of skill. Instead, it was believed that such imperfect or hidden elements invited a deeper, more mindful engagement from the observer. They fostered a sense of mystery and required a quiet, attentive gaze to discern. It was their way of saying, the true beauty lies not in what is obvious, but in what you take the time to discover. Historians still debate whether this was a conscious artistic choice or a more spiritual reflection of humanity's inherent imperfections. But it certainly wasn't about cutting corners. Imagine a modern artist deliberately leaving a blank space in a masterpiece, or a fashion designer putting a barely visible stitch in a couture gown and then expecting applause for it. It might work, but it would definitely require a very specific and probably very quiet audience. You feel a sense of tranquility permeating your very being. The constant hum of mental chatter, so common in your own time, seems to have receded, replaced by a soft, clear space within. The subtle scent of sun-baked earth and distant wildflowers drifts on the gentle air, a quiet perfume that adds to the sensory richness of this ancient silence. You realize that in this world, where quiet was woven into every aspect of life, even art became a path to inner stillness, a silent invitation to contemplation. As the sun begins its slow descent from its midday zenith, the quality of light subtly changes again, softening the edges of the world, deepening the shadows once more. A gentle, almost imperceptible breeze stirs, carrying with it the faint, sweet scent of blooming jasmine from a hidden courtyard. The air, still warm, feels less heavy now, more breathable, as if the world itself is sighing contentedly. Even the dust motes dancing in the shafts of light seem to move with a lazy, unhurried grace, each tiny particle a silent dancer in the vast stillness. You notice children playing in a nearby alleyway, but their games are remarkably quiet. There are no shrieks or loud shouts, just the soft scuff of bare feet on packed earth, the gentle murmur of voices, and the occasional tinkling sound of small handmade toys. Their laughter, when it comes, is a soft, melodic ripple, quickly absorbed by the surrounding quietude. Even in their play, they seem to instinctively understand and respect the prevailing atmosphere of calm. It makes you ponder how much of our modern children's noise comes from external stimuli, from screens and loud toys, rather than from their own inherent joy. Here, joy seems to find a quieter expression. This cultural emphasis on silence had profound implications for their everyday routines and domestic life. The home was often seen as a sanctuary, a place where the clamor of the outside world could be shut out, and a profound sense of peace cultivated. This wasn't just about the physical quiet achieved through thick walls and soft furnishings. It was about a mindful approach to daily tasks, an intentional slowing down of the pace of life. Imagine preparing a meal, not with the hurried clang of pots and pans, or the blare of a kitchen radio, but with deliberate, almost meditative movements. Each chop of a knife, each stir of a spoon becoming a rhythmic whisper in the quiet space. A major historical fact that illustrates this domestic quietude is the widespread use of underground living spaces and semi-subterranean rooms in ancient Persian homes, particularly in hotter regions. These spaces, known as sardabs or cellars, weren't just for escaping the heat. Their thick, earth-insulated walls provided exceptional soundproofing, creating pockets of profound silence even within bustling households. Families would retreat to these cool, quiet havens during the hottest parts of the day, using the time for rest, quiet conversation, or contemplation. It was their version of a noise-canceling headphone, but built into the very architecture of their lives, and without the need for batteries or Bluetooth connectivity. This quiet domesticity extended to social interactions within the home. Conversations among family members were often more measured, punctuated by pauses, allowing for deeper listening and more thoughtful responses. Arguments, when they arose, were often conducted in lower tones, almost hushed, a testament to the belief that loud, aggressive speech was disruptive to the harmony of the home and the spirit. It's hard to imagine, in a world accustomed to reality TV shouting matches and highly opinionated dinner debates, but for them, quiet disagreement was still disagreement, just with a touch more decorum. There's an obscure cultural tidbit that highlights this. In some noble households, particularly those with scholarly family members, it was customary to have a designated quiet meal once a week. During this meal, no one was permitted to speak, allowing each person to fully experience the food, the company, and the simple act of shared sustenance in profound silence. It was believed to enhance digestion, sharpen the senses, and foster a deeper appreciation for the blessings of life. You can just picture the first time a visiting dignitary was invited to one of these meals, trying to figure out if it was a test, a punishment, or just a very, very awkward dinner party. Historians still debate whether these quiet meals were universally practiced or a more esoteric custom, but they certainly offer a window into their unique relationship with sound. You feel a profound sense of peace settling over you, a quiet comfort that permeates your bones. The gentle rhythm of this ancient world, its soft sounds and profound silences, has lulled you into a state of deep relaxation. You realize that true luxury for these people wasn't about ostentatious display, but about the cultivation of inner peace, the conscious weaving of silence into the very fabric of their daily existence. And in that quietude, they found a richness that modern life, with all its clamor, often overlooks. As the afternoon light deepens, casting a warm, golden hue across the ancient mud brick walls, the air carries a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. The heat, while still present, softens into a gentle embrace, and the long shadows begin to stretch, elongating themselves like patient guardians across the dusty paths. A faint, sweet aroma of baking bread drifts on the barely there breeze from a communal oven, a comforting scent that speaks of sustenance and quiet domesticity. Even the rustle of a distant palm tree, usually a dry whisper, now sounds like a soft, melodic sigh. You pass by a bustling, yet remarkably quiet bazaar. Unlike the frenetic markets you might imagine, with shouting vendors and incessant haggling, this one operates on a different rhythm. Voices are kept low. Transactions are often completed with quiet gestures, and even the clatter of wares is somehow muffled, absorbed by the thick textiles and earthen floors. Merchants seem to communicate through knowing glances and subtle nods, an unspoken language of trust and mutual understanding. It's as if the very act of commerce is imbued with a meditative quality, a dance of quiet exchange rather than a battle of wills. This intrinsic understanding of silence had a profound impact on ancient Persian diplomacy and negotiation. In a world where alliances were forged and broken with a word, and trust was the bedrock of any agreement, the ability to listen deeply, to discern the unspoken, was paramount. Rushing into speech, or filling every pause with pronouncements, was often seen as a sign of weakness or, worse, deceit. A major historical fact is that Persian diplomatic envoys were renowned throughout the ancient world for their measured speech and strategic use of silence during negotiations. They understood that a well-placed pause could convey more authority and insight than 1,000 words, allowing their counterparts to reveal their true intentions in the uncomfortable vacuum of unfulfilled air. Imagine a negotiation between a Persian ambassador and a representative from a neighboring kingdom. Instead of immediate counter-arguments, the Persian envoy might simply gaze steadily, allowing the other party's words to hang in the air, creating a palpable tension that often compelled further, perhaps unintentional, disclosure. This wasn't about being confrontational. It was about creating a space where truth, or at least a clearer understanding, could emerge from the stillness. It's a bit like playing poker, where your best bluff is to simply say nothing, letting the other players stew in their own anxieties. And in a time before encrypted communications, this human element of subtle nonverbal cues was incredibly powerful. There's an obscure cultural tidbit related to this diplomatic quietude. When formal agreements or treaties were finally reached, they were often concluded not with loud cheers or celebratory banquets, but with a period of solemn, shared silence. This was known as a pact of quietude, where both parties would sit together, unmoving, allowing the weight of their words and the gravity of their agreement to settle deep within them. It was believed that this shared silence imbued the pact with greater permanence and spiritual binding, far more so than any written word or public declaration. Historians still debate the precise rituals involved in these pacts of quietude, but their symbolic power is undeniable. Try proposing that for your next business deal. You might get some very confused looks, or perhaps just a very long, awkward silence. You feel a quiet confidence emanating from the very stones around you. A sense of patient strength that comes from knowing how to wield stillness as a tool, not just as an absence. The air is soft against your skin, and the fading light seems to invite a gentle introspection. You realize that in this ancient world, the true power lay not in the loudest voice, but in the most attentive ear and the most strategically observed silence. As the late afternoon deepens, the world takes on a softer, more ethereal glow. The sun, now lower on the horizon, casts long, painterly shadows that stretch and merge, transforming the familiar landscape into a canvas of shifting light and shade. The air is beginning to cool, carrying with it a crispness that hints at the approaching evening, and the distant sound of crickets begins to emerge, a soft, rhythmic chorus that punctuates the profound quiet. Even the subtle scent of drying herbs from a nearby garden seems more pronounced in the stillness. You pass by a group of elders, seated on woven mats outside a dwelling, their faces etched with the wisdom of years. They are not speaking, yet there is a clear, palpable communication happening between them, a shared understanding conveyed through slight nods, gentle smiles, and long, comfortable silences. It's a silent conversation that speaks of deep connection and a lifetime of shared experience, far richer than any hurried exchange of words. You sense a profound respect in the way they simply are together, without the need to fill every moment with chatter. This mastery of silence also played a crucial role in the military and strategic thinking of ancient Persia. While not immediately obvious, the intentional use of quietude was a powerful psychological weapon and a key element of their renowned military discipline. Surprise, stealth, and measured movements were often prioritized over overwhelming force or boisterous displays. A major historical fact is that the elite units of the Achaemenid Persian army, particularly the Immortals, were known for their disciplined, almost silent maneuvers on the battlefield. Their movements precise, and their commands often communicated through subtle signals rather than loud shouts. Imagine an army that moves like a ghost, its presence felt before it is seen or heard. This emphasis on quiet discipline wasn't just about stealth. It was also about fostering a profound sense of psychological control. A silent army was an intimidating army, its very quietude suggesting an unwavering resolve and a chilling efficiency. Loud, chaotic armies often betrayed disorganization and fear. The Persians understood that the absence of sound could be far more unnerving than any battle cry. It's a bit like a horror movie where the most terrifying moments are often the quietest ones, leaving your imagination to fill in the dread. A general who could command profound silence from his troops was a general who commanded absolute obedience and unwavering focus. There's an obscure cultural tidbit related to their military quietude. During long march or when encamped near enemy lines, Persian soldiers were sometimes forbidden from speaking above a whisper, even during off-duty hours. Violations could result in severe disciplinary action. This wasn't just for tactical reasons of concealment. It was also believed to foster mental discipline and to keep the soldiers' minds sharp and focused, free from the distractions of idle chatter or emotional outbursts. It's like a very strict, very ancient version of a silent meditation retreat, but with swords and uncomfortable sleeping arrangements. Historians still debate the exact enforcement and duration of such silent marches, but their impact on unit cohesion and psychological preparedness must have been significant. You feel a subtle shift in your own perception, a heightened awareness of the soft sounds around you, the distant murmur of the breeze, the gentle rustle of fabric, the quiet thrum of your own presence in this ancient world. The sun dips lower, painting the sky in shades of fiery orange and soft violet, and you realize that even the grandeur of the sunset is observed here with a profound, almost reverent quietude. The ancient Persians understood that true power, in all its forms, often resides not in the clamor of assertion, but in the profound, unwavering strength of silence. As dusk begins its gentle descent, painting the sky in hues of deep indigo and soft twilight, the air takes on a crisp coolness, a comforting embrace after the day's warmth. The distant calls of night birds begin to emerge, melodic and ethereal, weaving themselves into the deepening silence. The scent of night-blooming jasmine becomes more pronounced, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp soil as the dew begins to settle. Every subtle shift in the atmosphere seems amplified by the profound quiet that has been your constant companion throughout this ancient day. You notice the oil lamps being lit in the doorways of the mud brick homes, their soft, flickering glows casting dancing shadows that seem to stretch and shrink with each flicker. The light is not harsh or intrusive, but a gentle illumination, beckoning you into the quiet embrace of the approaching night. There's a distinct lack of artificial urgency, no jarring sounds of machinery or distant traffic. Just the soft murmur of life winding down, settling into its natural, unhurried rhythm. This profound understanding and cultivation of silence were deeply intertwined with ancient Persian medicine and healing practices. Unlike many ancient cultures that relied heavily on loud incantations or dramatic rituals, Persian healers often emphasized the creation of a serene environment and the mindful application of therapeutic quietude as integral components of the healing process. A major historical fact is that physicians in ancient Persia, particularly those influenced by the teachings of Avicenna, meticulously designed healing chambers in their hospitals and private practices to minimize noise and external distractions, believing that peace and quiet were essential for the patient's recovery. It was their version of a modern-day silent ward, only perhaps with more aromatic herbs and less insistent beeping of machines. They understood that the body, when stressed by illness, needed respite from external stimuli to focus its energies on recovery. Loud noises were seen as a source of dis-ease, literally disrupting the body's natural harmony. Therefore, treatments often involved periods of quiet rest, gentle massage, and the consumption of soothing herbal concoctions in an environment specifically designed for tranquility. It wasn't just about administering remedies. It was about creating the optimal conditions for the body to heal itself. Much like a gardener knows that a delicate plant needs calm conditions to truly flourish. There's an obscure cultural tidbit related to this medical quietude. In some more holistic healing practices, particularly for ailments of the mind or spirit, patients would be prescribed sound fasts. For certain periods, they would be encouraged to retreat to silent spaces, perhaps a secluded garden, a quiet chamber, or even a remote desert location, to simply be in silence. It was believed that this extreme quietude allowed the agitated mind to settle, like disturbed sediment in a clear pool, revealing the underlying causes of their distress. Imagine a doctor telling you to go on a noise diet for a week. You might think they're joking, or perhaps gently suggesting you need a vacation. But for them, it was a legitimate, if unconventional, therapeutic intervention. Historians still debate the specific duration and effectiveness of these sound fasts, but their philosophical basis is clear. You feel a profound sense of inner calm, a softening of any lingering tension in your shoulders and jaw. The soft, cooling air caresses your skin, and the distant sounds of the approaching night are like a gentle lullaby. You realize that for the ancient Persians, healing wasn't just about the body. It was about the delicate interplay between body, mind, and spirit, and that silence was a vital balm for all three. The last vestiges of daylight cling to the western horizon, painting the sky in the deepest shades of violet and rose, before surrendering completely to the velvet blackness of night. The air has grown delightfully cool, carrying the sweet, clean scent of dry earth refreshed by the evening dew. Stars, impossibly bright and numerous, begin to prickle the inky expanse above, each one a tiny silent beacon in the vast cosmic quiet. The distant chorus of crickets has now swelled into a steady, rhythmic hum, a soft, living blanket of sound that only emphasizes the profound absence of human clamor. You walk past a small, unlit caravanserai, its sturdy mud brick walls casting deep, impenetrable shadows. You imagine weary travelers from distant lands, now settled into their quiet sleep within, their bustling daytime journeys replaced by the profound stillness of the desert night. The only sounds are the soft breathing of resting animals and the occasional, gentle sigh of the wind through the courtyard. It's a space designed for respite, a pause in the arduous journey, and in this quiet, it truly fulfills its purpose. This deep integration of silence into their daily lives naturally extended to their philosophical and contemplative traditions. For ancient Persian thinkers, particularly those influenced by Zoroastrianism and later Sufism, silence was not merely the absence of noise. It was seen as a pathway to higher knowledge, a necessary condition for introspection, and a key to unlocking profound truths. A major historical fact is that many Persian philosophers and mystics practiced various forms of silent meditation or contemplative retreat, where they would withdraw from the world for extended periods to cultivate inner stillness and seek divine wisdom. It was their version of a think tank, but instead of brainstorming sessions and whiteboards, it was more about profound quiet and existential staring. They believed that the constant stream of external stimuli and the incessant chatter of the human mind obscured the deeper, more subtle layers of reality. True insight, they argued, could only emerge when the mind was quieted, when the inner and outer noise subsided, allowing the divine voice or the voice of reason to be heard clearly. It was a conscious effort to peel back the layers of illusion, to see beyond the superficial, and grasp the fundamental essence of existence. This often involved rigorous mental discipline, not just physical withdrawal. There's an obscure cultural tidbit that illustrates this philosophical quietude. Certain Persian philosophical schools had a practice where students, when presenting their arguments or insights, were expected to include a designated pause for reflection within their discourse. This wasn't a nervous hesitation, but a deliberate, measured silence during which both the speaker and the listeners were meant to contemplate the weight and implications of the words just spoken. It was an intellectual ritual, forcing a slowing down of thought, ensuring that ideas were truly absorbed and not merely processed. Imagine a modern academic conference where every speaker takes a 30-second silent break after every major point. It would certainly change the pace and perhaps the depth of intellectual exchange, even if it did make the conference run significantly longer. Historians still debate the precise duration and frequency of these pauses for reflection, but their purpose was clear: to foster deeper understanding. You feel the stillness of the ancient night enveloping you, a profound sense of peace that seems to seep into your very bones. The stars above shimmer with an almost hypnotic brilliance, and the gentle, rhythmic chorus of the crickets is a soft lullaby. You realize that for the ancient Persians, silence was not an empty void, but a rich, fertile ground where wisdom could grow, where the mind could connect with the divine, and where the deepest truths of existence could be quietly, profoundly understood. The clamor of your own world feels impossibly far away, and in this gentle quiet, you find a stillness you didn't even realize you were missing. The night is now in full command, a vast velvety expanse illuminated by the breathtaking brilliance of countless stars. The air is cool and still, carrying only the faintest whispers of the world, like secrets exchanged between the moon and the ancient earth. The gentle, rhythmic hum of the crickets is a constant soothing companion, a natural symphony woven into the profound silence. You can almost feel the presence of the distant mountains, their dark silhouettes merging with the sky, silent sentinels watching over the sleeping landscape. You stand on a small rise, looking out over the hushed village. The soft glows of the oil lamps have dimmed in many windows, signaling the deep slumber of its inhabitants. Only the faintest, almost ethereal light from the distant moon casts a silvery sheen on the flat rooftops, transforming them into a canvas of muted reflections. There are no sudden noises, no jarring disruptions, just the profound peace of a world at rest. It's the kind of quiet that feels ancient, primordial, a silence that has witnessed countless nights, countless lives, unfolding beneath its watchful gaze. This deep reverence for quiet had a subtle yet pervasive influence on the social etiquette and interpersonal communication of ancient Persian society. Unlike cultures that celebrated boisterous expressions or aggressive rhetoric, Persian society, particularly in its more refined circles, valued decorum, measured speech, and the art of polite listening. Loudness was often associated with vulgarity or lack of self-control, while quiet confidence and thoughtful responses were highly esteemed. A major historical fact is that Persian courtly etiquette placed a significant emphasis on appropriate pauses during conversation, with individuals expected to allow others ample time to fully articulate their thoughts before offering a response. It was their version of active listening, but without the need for a corporate training seminar to explain it. Imagine a conversation among courtiers or scholars. There wouldn't be interruptions, or people talking over one another, or the frantic need to jump in with a witty retort. Instead, each person's contribution would be given space to breathe, to be absorbed and considered before a reply was offered. This fostered a climate of mutual respect and deeper understanding, where the quality of thought was valued more than the speed of response. It's a bit like a highly choreographed dance, where each step, each movement, is precisely timed and executed, creating a harmonious flow rather than a chaotic scramble. There's an obscure cultural tidbit related to this social quietude. In certain formal gatherings, especially those involving elders or esteemed guests, there was a practice known as sokauti hormati, or respectful silence. During this designated period, often initiated by a subtle gesture from the host, all conversation would cease, and participants would simply sit in quiet contemplation, allowing the presence of those around them and the atmosphere of the gathering itself to be fully appreciated without the need for words. It was a conscious act of reverence, a way to deepen the collective experience. Imagine trying to implement that at your next social event. You might get a few bewildered looks, or perhaps just a rapid emptying of the room, as people wonder if they've accidentally wandered into a silent retreat. Historians still debate the specific duration and frequency of sokauti hormati, but its very existence speaks volumes about their nuanced approach to social interaction. You feel a profound sense of calm settling within you, as if the ancient quiet has permeated your very being. The constant hum of your own inner dialogue, so often present, has softened, replaced by a spacious tranquility. The cool night air whispers secrets of ancient civility, and you realize that in this world, even the art of conversation was imbued with the profound power of silence, a testament to a society that understood the true weight of unspoken understanding. The night stretches on, deep and silent, a canvas against which the stars sparkle with an almost unreal intensity. The air is cool and crisp, carrying the faint, earthy scent of the desert floor and the subtle, sweet perfume of unseen night-blooming flowers. The rhythmic chorus of crickets continues its soothing thrum, a constant, gentle pulse beneath the vast quietude. You can feel the profound stillness of the landscape, a quietude that seems to stretch back through millennia, witnessing the rise and fall of empires, the quiet lives of generations, all under the same unwavering, silent gaze of the night sky. You become aware of the subtle movements of your own breath, the soft inhale and exhale, a quiet rhythm that merges seamlessly with the stillness around you. There's a comforting sense of being utterly present, untethered from the relentless pull of time and distraction. This isn't the kind of quiet that feels empty or lonely. Instead, it feels full, pregnant with unspoken meaning, with the ancient hum of existence itself. This pervasive cultural emphasis on silence also had a significant, though often overlooked, impact on ancient Persian urban planning and architectural design. Beyond the individual homes and gardens, entire cities were often conceived with acoustic considerations in mind, aiming to create environments that fostered a sense of peace and order rather than chaotic clamor. A major historical fact is that the layout of certain ancient Persian cities and royal compounds, such as parts of Persepolis, incorporated elements like wide thoroughfares, strategically placed courtyards, and specific building materials that helped absorb sound and minimize echoing, creating distinct zones of relative quiet even within bustling areas. It was their version of modern urban soundscaping, but without the need for fancy noise mapping software or extensive acoustic engineering reports. Imagine walking through a marketplace that, while active, felt contained. Its sounds somehow absorbed and diffused, preventing them from escalating into an overwhelming din. This was achieved not just through thick walls, but also through the careful placement of public spaces, the use of water features as natural sound masks, and even the strategic planting of trees and vegetation which served as natural sound barriers. The goal wasn't to eliminate sound entirely, but to manage it, to scope the auditory environment in a way that promoted tranquility and ease of communication, rather than agitation. It's like designing a living room where the acoustics make conversation easy and comfortable, rather than a cavernous hall where every whisper echoes like a shout. There's an obscure cultural tidbit that illustrates this architectural ingenuity. In some larger public buildings, particularly those used for administrative or scholarly purposes, architects would sometimes incorporate acoustic niches, small, concave recesses in walls or ceilings designed to either absorb specific frequencies of sound or to direct soft whispers to a particular listening point without disturbing the wider area. These were not just decorative elements. They were functional tools for managing sound in an era without amplification technology. Imagine trying to explain that to a modern construction crew. Yes, we need a small curved indent here, specifically for very quiet eavesdropping, or perhaps just to absorb the faint sigh of a tired bureaucrat. Historians still debate the precise technical efficacy of all such acoustic niches, but their deliberate design speaks to a profound understanding of sound principles. You feel the profound peace of the ancient night enveloping you, a soft blanket of stillness that invites deep relaxation. The distant rhythmic hum of the crickets is a soothing backdrop, and the cool air whispers ancient secrets against your skin. You realize that for the ancient Persians, even the very structure of their cities was a conscious act of weaving silence, creating environments where human life could unfold with dignity, clarity, and a profound sense of inner calm. The ceaseless noise of your own world feels impossibly distant, a forgotten echo in the tranquil vastness of this ancient night. As the night deepens further, reaching its profoundest point of stillness, the air grows even cooler, carrying with it the crisp, invigorating scent of the desert at its most tranquil. The myriad stars overhead seem to intensify their brilliance, each one a diamond chip scattered across the infinite black velvet of the sky, offering silent illumination to the sleeping world. The rhythmic chorus of crickets has settled into a steady, almost hypnotic drone, a living testament to the omnipresent quiet. You feel a deep connection to this ancient rhythm, a sense of timelessness that washes over you, dissolving the edges of your modern-day existence. You notice the profound stillness of the few animals that stir in the night. A lone donkey, tethered near a small dwelling, stands motionless, its silhouette a stoic shape against the faint moonlight, its breathing soft and measured. Even the air itself seems to hold its breath, waiting, listening. There is no urgency in the nocturnal world, only a patient unfolding, a quiet continuation of life under the benevolent gaze of the stars. It makes you realize how much of modern life's noise is self-generated, a frantic attempt to fill every void, whereas here, the void itself is filled with a rich, palpable presence. This conscious integration of silence was not just for the living. It extended to ancient Persian funerary practices and the reverence for the deceased. Death was seen not as an end, but as a transition, and the journey of the soul was believed to require quietude, both for the departed and for those left behind. Loud lamentations or excessive noise were often discouraged, replaced by a profound, respectful silence that allowed for introspection and spiritual contemplation. A major historical fact is that Zoroastrian funerary rites, which were prevalent in ancient Persia, emphasized a period of quiet watchfulness and solemn silence around the deceased, often for several days, to ensure the peaceful departure of the soul and to allow mourners to process their grief in a calm, contemplative manner. It was their version of a quiet wake, but without the awkward small talk or the endless platters of lukewarm food. The belief was that the soul, on its journey, was sensitive to the vibrations of the living world, and that excessive noise could disturb its passage. Therefore, the living had a duty to create an environment of peace and stillness, a final act of loving consideration for the departed. This quiet mourning wasn't about suppressing grief, but about channeling it into a more profound, internalized process, allowing for spiritual acceptance rather than outward, noisy despair. It's a bit like taking a profound, silent bow at the end of a long and meaningful performance. There's an obscure cultural tidbit related to this funerary quietude. In some communities, particularly amongst certain priestly families, there was a custom where specific silence keepers would be appointed to ensure that the immediate surroundings of the deceased were kept utterly free from any unnecessary sound for a designated period. These individuals would gently, but firmly, redirect any loud conversations or disruptive activities, acting as silent guardians of the transition. Imagine having a job where your primary duty is to make sure absolutely nothing makes noise. It sounds either incredibly peaceful or utterly maddening, depending on your personality. Historians still debate the widespread nature of such dedicated silence keepers, but their existence points to the depth of this cultural value. You feel a profound sense of tranquility, a gentle calm that washes over you as you contemplate this quiet reverence for life's most profound transition. The cool night air whispers secrets of ancient wisdom, and the distant, rhythmic hum of the crickets is a timeless reminder of life's enduring cycle. You realize that for the ancient Persians, even in the face of death, silence was not an absence, but a sacred presence, a pathway to peace and acceptance. As the deep night slowly begins its imperceptible turn towards dawn, the air grows even crisper, carrying a freshness that hints at the coming light. The stars, though still numerous, seem to twinkle with a softened brilliance, a prelude to their gradual fading. The rhythmic chorus of crickets, having sustained its patient hum throughout the darkest hours, now seems to recede just slightly, becoming a more subtle underscore to the profound quiet. A faint, almost imperceptible silvering begins to touch the eastern horizon, hinting at the imminent return of the sun. You feel a profound stillness within your own body, a sense of restfulness that transcends mere sleep. Your breath is deep and even, and your mind, usually so active, is now a calm, clear pool. This isn't the quiet enforced by external means, but a quiet that has been patiently cultivated, absorbed from the very essence of this ancient world. It's a feeling of being utterly at peace, suspended in a timeless moment. This deep-seated cultural value of silence also found its way into the ancient Persian culinary arts and the rituals of eating. Unlike many cultures where meals were boisterous affairs filled with revelry and conversation, the act of eating in ancient Persia, particularly in its more refined settings, was often imbued with a sense of quiet mindfulness and appreciation. Loud chewing, clanking of utensils, or excessive chatter were generally frowned upon, replaced by a more contemplative enjoyment of food. A major historical fact is that certain Persian dining etiquette, particularly for formal meals, encouraged a slower pace of eating and a focus on the subtle flavors and textures of the food, often accompanied by long pauses for digestion and appreciative silence. It was their version of a mindful eating retreat, but disguised as dinner with friends. They understood that the enjoyment of food was a multi-sensory experience, and that overwhelming it with noise and distraction diminished its true essence. The quiet allowed for a deeper connection to the food itself, to the effort that went into its preparation, and to the simple blessing of sustenance. It was about savoring, not just consuming. Imagine a world where every meal felt like a quiet meditation, where each bite was a conscious act of nourishment. It's a stark contrast to our modern habit of eating quickly, often while distracted by screens or hurried conversations, barely tasting what's on our plate. There's an obscure cultural tidbit related to this culinary quietude. In some households, particularly those of devout individuals, there was a small, ceremonial bell that would be rung softly at the beginning and end of a meal. Its purpose was not to announce the meal, but to signify a transition into and out of a period of respectful silence, during which only the sounds of quiet eating were permitted. It was a gentle reminder to approach the act of eating with reverence and mindfulness. Imagine trying to implement that at a modern family dinner. You might get a few confused looks, or perhaps just a very long, very awkward silence broken only by the clinking of forks. Historians still debate the widespread nature of such meal bells, but their existence suggests a deliberate cultivation of quiet focus during mealtimes. You feel a profound sense of nourishment, not just for your body, but for your spirit, as you absorb the quiet wisdom of this ancient practice. The cool, fresh air of the pre-dawn whispers of a different way of living, one where even the simplest acts, like eating, are elevated to moments of mindful quietude. The rhythmic hum of the crickets, now softer, is a gentle reminder that true richness often lies not in what is added, but in what is carefully, respectfully, left unsaid and unheard. The first tentative whispers of dawn are now painting the eastern sky with the palest shades of rose and silver. The stars, once so brilliantly dominant, are beginning to recede, fading into the encroaching light. The air is cool and extraordinarily fresh, carrying the delicate scent of morning dew on dry earth. The rhythmic chorus of crickets has finally begun its slow, graceful retreat, becoming almost imperceptible, a gentle memory woven into the fabric of the fading night. A profound sense of quiet anticipation hangs in the air, a stillness that breathes with the promise of a new day. You notice the subtle shifting of the light, how it begins to define the outlines of the mud brick homes, picking out the rough textures of the walls and highlighting the gentle sway of the distant date palms. The world is waking, not with a jarring jolt, but with a patient, unhurried unfurling. There are no loud alarms, no immediate demands for attention. Just the soft, gradual return of visibility, accompanied by a silence that feels deeper, richer, for having held the night so profoundly. It's a reminder that truly profound transitions often occur in the quietest moments, just at the edge of awareness. This profound cultural emphasis on silence was not merely passive. It involved active techniques and practices for cultivating inner quietude, even amidst the subtle sounds of daily life. For the ancient Persians, achieving true silence was not just about external conditions, but about mastering the internal landscape of the mind. A major historical fact is the various forms of breath control and mindful observation, similar to rudimentary meditation practices, were utilized by philosophers, mystics, and even ordinary people to quiet the mind and achieve a state of inner stillness. They understood that the greatest source of noise often comes from within, from the relentless chatter of thoughts. Imagine a simple farmer out in his fields as the sun rises. He might pause, not just to rest his body, but to consciously regulate his breath, to focus on the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest, allowing his mind to clear, to become as vast and open as the sky above him. This wasn't necessarily a formal religious ritual for everyone, but a practical technique for mental clarity and emotional regulation. It was their version of a mental reset button, pressed frequently and without fanfare, allowing them to approach their tasks with greater focus and equanimity. There's an obscure cultural tidbit that illustrates this inner cultivation of quiet. Some ancient Persian contemplative traditions spoke of listening to the heart's silence. This wasn't a literal auditory experience, but a metaphorical practice where individuals would focus their awareness inward, seeking to quiet the ego and the incessant mental dialogue, in order to hear the deeper, intuitive wisdom believed to reside in the heart. It was a form of self-listening, a way to access profound inner guidance that was often obscured by the noise of daily life. Imagine trying to explain that concept to a modern self-help guru. They might try to turn it into a multi-level marketing scheme. Historians still debate the specific techniques used to achieve this heart silence, but its spiritual and psychological significance is clear. You feel a profound sense of inner spaciousness, a quiet expansion that seems to resonate with the vastness of the pre-dawn sky. The crisp, cool air against your skin is invigorating, and the subtle shift in light is a gentle invitation to awaken to a new day, not with a rush, but with a profound sense of quiet readiness. You realize that for the ancient Persians, the art of weaving silence was not just about the world outside, but about a lifelong journey of cultivating peace within, a quiet mastery of the self that allowed them to truly inhabit their lives with grace and profound tranquility. The sun, a nascent sphere of soft gold, is now just peeking above the eastern horizon, casting long, tender fingers of light across the landscape. The cool air of pre-dawn begins to yield to a gentle warmth, and the first faint chirps of waking birds emerge, tentative and melodic, adding a delicate layer to the lingering quiet. The dew-kissed earth releases its subtle, sweet fragrance, mingling with the last hints of night-blooming jasmine. There's a feeling of renewal, a fresh breath drawn by the world, all unfolding in a beautiful, unhurried stillness. You notice the muted colors of the morning light, how they soften the harsh edges of the mud brick homes, transforming them into shapes of quiet warmth. A lone figure, perhaps a farmer, begins to stir in the distance, moving with a slow, deliberate pace, his movements almost a part of the landscape's awakening. There's no sense of urgency, no frantic rush to begin the day, just a gentle, mindful transition from rest to activity. It's a deliberate, almost ritualistic embrace of the morning, in stark contrast to the jolting awakenings of your own time, often driven by the insistent alarm of a phone. This profound cultural value of silence was also inherently linked to their relationship with nature and the environment. For the ancient Persians, the natural world was not something to be conquered or exploited, but a sacred entity, teeming with subtle energies and divine presence, best appreciated in quiet contemplation. Loudness and disregard for the natural soundscape were seen as disrespectful, disrupting the delicate balance of the world. A major historical fact is that many ancient Persian gardens and agricultural practices were designed not just for utility or beauty, but also to create pockets of natural tranquility where the sounds of human activity were minimized to allow for a deeper connection with the rhythms of the earth. Imagine a world where even your farming practices considered the quiet comfort of the surrounding ecosystem. They understood that the earth, like the human spirit, needed periods of rest and quiet to flourish. Overuse, constant noise, and relentless activity were believed to exhaust the land, much as they exhausted the human mind. Therefore, practices like crop rotation, fallow periods, and sustainable water management were not just practical necessities, but also reflections of this deeper philosophical understanding of nature's need for quietude. It was their version of ecological mindfulness, long before the term ecotourism became a buzzword for slightly less noisy vacations. There's an obscure cultural tidbit that highlights this reverence for natural quiet. In certain remote areas, particularly near sacred springs or ancient groves, there were vows of natural silence taken by those who entered. Visitors were expected to speak only in hushed tones, if at all, and to move with deliberate quietude so as not to disturb the inherent peace of the natural sanctuary. It was believed that in such profound quiet, one could truly hear the voice of the land or the whispers of the elements. Imagine a national park where the only sound you hear is the wind and the rustling leaves, because everyone is actually respecting these silent zones. Historians still debate how widely these formal vows were practiced, but the underlying respect for natural quiet was deeply ingrained. You feel a profound sense of connection to the natural world around you, a quiet harmony that resonates with your very being. The soft warmth of the rising sun is a gentle caress, and the delicate scents of the morning are a subtle symphony. You realize that for the ancient Persians, silence was not just a human construct, but a fundamental aspect of the natural order, a rhythm to be respected and cherished, allowing both humanity and the earth to breathe, to flourish, and to simply be in profound, unhurried peace. The clamor of distant cities feels wonderfully, blessedly, far away. The sun is now fully risen, a gentle, golden presence in the clear morning sky, its light washing over the ancient landscape with a soft, diffusing warmth. The cool crispness of pre-dawn has given way to a balmy sweetness in the air, carrying the faint, earthy scent of sun-warmed dust and distant, blossoming oleander. The birds, having greeted the dawn, have settled into a more scattered, occasional chirping, allowing the deeper, omnipresent quiet to reassert itself. You feel the profound stillness of the world as it fully awakens, a subtle hum of life unfolding at its own deliberate pace. You notice the way the light plays across the textured surfaces of the mud brick walls, highlighting every ripple and imperfection, turning them into works of quiet, understated art. A faint, almost imperceptible breeze stirs, rustling the dry leaves of a nearby fig tree with a sound like whispered secrets. There's a palpable sense of peace that permeates everything, a quiet assurance that the day will unfold with its own natural grace, unburdened by haste or artificial urgency. It's a beautiful reminder that profound strength can often be found in stillness, not in frantic motion. This pervasive cultural appreciation for silence also had a significant, though perhaps less obvious, influence on ancient Persian governance and leadership. While kings and rulers certainly held immense power, the most respected among them were often those who governed with a measured hand, whose decisions were seen to emerge from thoughtful deliberation rather than impulsive pronouncements. Loud, boastful rulers were often perceived as lacking true wisdom or self-control. A major historical fact is that Persian kings, particularly during the Achaemenid Empire, were often advised by councils of elders and wise men who emphasized periods of quiet contemplation before major policy decisions, believing that true statecraft required a clear, unagitated mind. It was their version of a silent retreat for politicians, which, frankly, sounds like a very good idea even in the modern world. They understood that leadership was not just about issuing commands, but about listening. Listening to their advisors, listening to the needs of their people, and listening to the subtle currents of the world. And true listening, they knew, required quietude. A leader who could not quiet their own mind, or who was constantly surrounded by clamor, was seen as prone to error and poor judgment. Their wisdom was often perceived to stem from their ability to process information deeply, in moments of stillness, allowing insights to emerge rather than forcing them. There's an obscure cultural tidbit that illustrates this quiet approach to governance. During state audiences or formal receptions, it was common for the ruler to maintain extended periods of silence, allowing subjects or envoys to present their cases fully, without interruption or the pressure of immediate response. This was not a sign of indifference, but a demonstration of power and attentiveness, allowing the speaker to reveal more, and the ruler to absorb and consider everything before offering a measured reply. Imagine a head of state today sitting in complete silence, simply listening, for several minutes. The news cycles would likely explode with speculation, wondering if they'd forgotten their lines, or perhaps just fallen asleep. Historians still debate the specific protocols of these royal silences, but their purpose was clearly to project calm authority and encourage thoughtful discourse. You feel a profound sense of quiet strength emanating from the very fabric of this ancient society. The gentle warmth of the morning sun is a comforting presence, and the soft, diffused light seems to highlight the quiet dignity of every element around you. You realize that for the ancient Persians, even the act of governing was imbued with the profound power of silence, a testament to a leadership that understood the subtle art of listening, contemplating, and allowing wisdom to emerge from stillness. The boisterous declarations of modern politics feel wonderfully, blessedly, distant in this quiet, ancient morning. As the morning progresses, the sun climbs higher, painting the ancient landscape in increasingly vibrant hues of gold and ochre. The air is now comfortably warm, carrying the gentle murmur of a distant, unseen stream. Its soft gurgle, a natural counterpoint to the pervading quiet. The scent of sun-baked earth is more pronounced, mingling with the subtle, sweet aroma of wild thyme from the rocky slopes beyond the village. You can feel the steady, unhurried pulse of the day, a rhythm that encourages a deep sense of calm and presence. You observe the subtle movements of the day as it unfolds. A lone shepherd, high on a distant ridge, moves slowly with his flock, his silhouette sharp against the bright sky. There's no hurry in his steps, no frantic shouts to his animals. His existence seems a quiet meditation, perfectly attuned to the silent expanses around him. It's a powerful testament to a way of life that understands the profound peace that comes from working in harmony with natural rhythms, rather than constantly battling against them. This inherent appreciation for silence was also deeply embedded in ancient Persian craftsmanship and technological innovation. While we often associate ancient technology with the clang of metal or the grinding of stone, the most sophisticated advancements often involved precise, deliberate, and often remarkably quiet processes. Loudness could signify error, imprecision, or a lack of mastery. A major historical fact is that the construction of qanats, the elaborate underground irrigation systems that brought water across vast distances in ancient Persia, required immense precision and a highly skilled, almost silent workforce. The digging of these tunnels, often stretching for miles, demanded acute listening to detect water sources and maintain precise gradients, a task best performed in profound quiet. Imagine digging a tunnel for miles, literally listening for water underground, and needing to be so quiet you could hear a drip from hundreds of feet away. It was a true marvel of quiet engineering. The artisans who created the exquisite metalwork, the intricate pottery, and the famed textiles of ancient Persia also worked with a mindful quietude. The delicate processes involved in creating a perfectly glazed pot or weaving a complex silk carpet demanded intense concentration and a freedom from distraction. Loud environments would hinder the precision and artistry required. It was about allowing the material to speak, to guide the hands of the craftsman, rather than imposing a chaotic will upon it. It's a bit like a surgeon performing a delicate operation, where every movement is precise and every unnecessary sound is a distraction. There's an obscure cultural tidbit related to this quiet craftsmanship. Some master artisans, particularly those working with precious metals or intricate inlay, would reportedly perform their most delicate work during the deepest hours of the night, not just for cooler temperatures, but for the profound silence it afforded. They believed that the absence of external noise allowed for an almost spiritual connection with their materials, enabling them to achieve a level of detail and perfection unattainable in the clamor of day. Imagine a world where your finest work was literally born in the quiet embrace of the night. Historians still debate the widespread nature of such nocturnal craftsmanship, but it speaks volumes about their dedication to the craft and their understanding of ideal working conditions. You feel a profound sense of respect for the quiet mastery that permeated every aspect of this ancient society. The gentle warmth of the morning sun is a soothing balm, and the distant, rhythmic gurgle of the unseen stream is a gentle reminder of the quiet ingenuity that shaped this land. You realize that for the ancient Persians, even the seemingly mundane acts of building and creating were infused with the profound power of silence, a testament to a people who understood that true precision and artistry often emerge from a place of deep, undisturbed focus. The endless whirring and grinding of modern machinery feels wonderfully, blessedly far away. The sun is now high, casting a warm, golden glow that illuminates every detail of the ancient village. The air is still, holding the heat of the day in a gentle embrace, yet there is no sense of oppression, only a pervasive calm. The subtle scent of sun-warmed clay and dry herbs permeates the atmosphere, a quiet perfume of the ancient world. Even the few sounds that drift on the air, a distant dog's bark, the faint creak of a wooden wheel, seem to be absorbed quickly by the vast quiet, leaving barely an echo. You observe the subtle interplay of light and shadow, how the intense sunlight defines the crisp edges of the buildings, while the shadows beneath them offer cool, inviting retreats. A single ancient olive tree stands in a small courtyard, its gnarled branches offering a patch of profound shade, its leaves shimmering silently in the heat. Everything speaks of patient endurance, of a world that understands the rhythm of stillness and the power of unhurried existence. It makes you reflect on the constant pursuit of novelty and speed in your own time, and how often that pursuit sacrifices depth and peace. This enduring cultural reverence for silence also deeply influenced ancient Persian spirituality and the esoteric traditions that sought to understand the deeper mysteries of existence. Beyond formal religion, there were always seekers, mystics, and contemplative orders who saw profound quietude as the essential pathway to divine union or enlightenment. Loudness, ego, and the clamor of the worldly mind were seen as impenetrable barriers to spiritual insight. A major historical fact is that many Persian Sufi orders utilized sustained periods of silent meditation and chanting as a core practice for reaching states of spiritual ecstasy and inner peace. It was their version of a cosmic broadband connection, but instead of more speed, it was about achieving more silence. They believed that the divine truth, the ultimate reality, was not something to be grasped through intellectual debate or noisy proclamations. but rather intuited through a profound quieting of the self. The silence was not empty. It was seen as pregnant with the divine presence, a space where the soul could commune directly with the infinite. It was about stripping away all the external noise and internal distractions to reveal the pure, unadulterated essence of being. There's an obscure cultural tidbit that highlights this esoteric quietude. Certain Persian mystics would sometimes engage in practices of listening to the silent name, where they would mentally repeat a sacred name or phrase without vocalizing it, focusing on the internal resonance and the profound silence between each mental repetition. This was believed to create a powerful internal vibration that quieted the mind and opened pathways to higher states of consciousness. Imagine trying to explain that to someone who thinks mindfulness is just a buzzword for deep breathing. Historians still debate the specific origins and variations of such silent name practices, but their prevalence points to a deep understanding of inner acoustics. You feel a profound sense of inner peace, a calm that seems to resonate with the very stillness of the ancient landscape. The warm, gentle air is a comforting presence, and the subtle scents of the day are a quiet perfume. You realize that for the ancient Persians, silence was not merely a cultural preference, but a sacred pathway, a profound, enduring art woven into the very fabric of their lives, leading them toward deeper wisdom, spiritual connection, and an ultimate, quiet understanding of existence. The constant, insistent clamor of your own world feels impossibly distant, a fading echo in the profound tranquility of this ancient place. The sun, having reached its zenith, now begins its slow, majestic descent, casting long, softened shadows across the ancient landscape once more. The air, still warm, carries a pleasant dryness, a subtle whisper of the vast open spaces beyond the village. The gentle hum of the unseen world, the distant buzz of an insect, the soft rustle of a dry leaf. These are the only sounds that truly register, each one amplifying the profound, enveloping quiet. You feel the steady, unhurried rhythm of the day, a timeless pulse that invites deep relaxation and a surrender to the present moment. You observe the subtle shift in the light, how the golden rays lengthen and diffuse, painting the mud brick walls in shades of burnished copper and soft rose. The atmosphere is one of profound peace, a quiet assurance that the day, having unfolded with its characteristic grace, is now gently transitioning towards its close. There's no sense of urgency, no frantic rush to gather the day's last moments. Just a slow, beautiful letting go, a quiet embrace of the inevitable passage of time. It makes you realize how much of your own world is driven by a fear of missing out, a frantic attempt to seize every moment. While here, every moment is simply lived in its own quiet unfolding. This journey through ancient Persia, through its quiet villages and its silent wisdom, has been an invitation to a different way of experiencing the world. It has been a subtle lesson in the forgotten art of weaving silence, not as an absence, but as a deliberate presence, a vital thread in the tapestry of life. We've seen how silence permeated their daily routines, their spiritual practices, their art, their education, and even their governance. Remember the silent markets, the quiet meals, the architectural designs that muffled sound? Each was a deliberate choice, a conscious act of creating tranquility in a world that, even without modern noise, understood the value of stillness. You think back to the listening rooms where individuals would simply sit, listening to the silence itself or the pacts of quietude that sealed agreements with unspoken commitment. Or the sound fasts for healing, and the silent names for spiritual insight. These weren't mere eccentricities. They were profound expressions of a culture that recognized quietude as a fundamental human need, a pathway to deeper understanding, true connection, and profound well-being. They understood that in a world without constant external clamor, the most important sounds were often the ones you heard from within, or the subtle whispers of the universe waiting to be noticed. As the sun dips lower, painting the horizon in a breathtaking display of oranges and purples, you feel the cool evening air begin to settle, carrying the faint, sweet scent of distant blossoms. The shadows lengthen, stretching out like welcoming arms, inviting you into the gentle embrace of the approaching night. The world around you continues its quiet descent into slumber, a process of profound peace and acceptance. And so, we bring our journey to a gentle close. You've walked the quiet paths of ancient Persia, felt the warmth of its sun, breathed its clean, still air, and perhaps, most importantly, you've listened to its profound silence. Let that quietude settle within you, a soft balm for the restless mind. Feel your body becoming heavier, more relaxed, sinking deeper into the comfort wherever you are. The world outside, with its insistent demands, feels wonderfully distant, a fading echo. Allow your breath to deepen, to slow. Each inhale a soft wave, each exhale a gentle release. Imagine the ancient quiet of this forgotten land surrounding you, a vast, comforting presence. There's nothing more to do, nowhere else to be. Just this moment, this breath, this profound, embracing stillness. Let the gentle whispers of history fade, like the last rays of the sun, leaving you in the profound, comforting quiet of your own space. Sleep well, my friend.